You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. All right, folks, while there's a flattening of the curve in some areas, the virus continues to spread in others. Everyone is looking forward to getting back to life as usual, but scientists believe that COVID-19 might come back again soon. The coronavirus mutates and continues to return in different iterations. COVID-19 is just the latest example. Joining us again, Dr. Joseph L. Graves, Professor of Biological Sciences at North Carolina A&T. And we still, of course, have our panel here, Dr. Neon Bay Carter, Mustafa Santiago Ali, as well as Rob Richardson. All right, Dr. Graves, we all got questions for you. What the hell? This thing might come back in a different form? What's the deal?
Okay, so one of the things you have to understand about coronavirus is that it's an RNA-based virus. Now, for your listeners and viewers, usually the way biology works is that DNA makes an RNA, which makes a protein. But in the RNA viruses, you first have an RNA strand, which then makes a DNA strand in your cells, which then goes on to make its RNA and the proteins of the virus. Now, in this process, there are two enzymes that make this possible. First is what's called an RNA-dependent RNA polymerase, which is an enzyme that basically puts the RNA parts together. And there's also an RNA-dependent DNA polymerase, which is the enzyme that puts the DNA together. Now, in the RNA viruses, neither of these sequences, none of these enzymes have a proof checking ability. So in our cells and bacteria cells, when RNA polymerase and DNA polymerase work, they usually have basically a spell check that determines that the sequence is okay. RNA viruses don't have that, so they have very high mutation rates. Now, what we know about coronavirus so far is that it doesn't have as high a mutation rate as influenza, which is another RNA virus, but it's still going rather strong. Since the virus was first identified in December, there are now over 5,300 genomes, meaning 5,300 variants of the virus that are present worldwide. Now, some of these variants are going to be milder, and that probably is what explains why there are some people who have mild cases of the corona disease and aren't showing really terrible symptoms, but then there are some that are really bad, and those are the ones that are killing people really quickly. So, since anytime you replicate a genetic code, mutations occur, this virus is going to come back again. And we already have evidence that the southern hemisphere, which is now headed towards winter, is beginning to see outbreaks of coronavirus there. Northern hemisphere is heading towards summer. In the summertime, we expect that high humidity and high temperature is going to act to activate this virus and slow down its spread. So the long and short answer is yes, the virus is going to come back again. So the defense is going to be developing a vaccine, and you want to make the vaccine from parts of the virus that change really slowly. And also you want to attack portions of the virus in terms of drug therapy that are crucial. And those two areas are an enzyme that's called its main protease. And this portion of the virus is what breaks down your proteins. Mm-hmm. And then there's also a portion of the virus, which is the polymerase, which puts the RNA and DNA together. Both of those can be attacked by drugs, by antiviral drugs. But we're still about 18 months away from having a vaccine or from having drug treatments that work.
Wow. Well, we had, of course, we had a doctor on from Harry who said that he said, look, everybody keeps talking about even 18 months. He said the shortest we've ever had a vaccine created was 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about something that we're really sure is going to work, it's going to take longer. I mean, clearly, because we're in an emergency situation, people are working on this all out.
Right.
But the earliest I've seen for projections of a vaccine are 18 months. And again, because of the coronavirus is going to evolve, that means that the vaccines are going to, again, need to be updated as new mutations occur and possibly change parts of the virus that the vaccine is recognizing.
Well, my panel has some questions for you. I'm first to start this round. Mustafa, what's your question for Doc?
Doc, yes. So what you've been sharing with us is, this cyclical process that goes on with these viruses. But we should also sort of highlight for folks, or I guess the question is, we know South Korea has had a good testing system in place. They were able to get their people in alignment. We know a little over 10,000 folks died. About 200 people died. 10,000 folks were impacted. But recently, there's been new information that's come out that's shown that over 100 people have now gotten reinfected. Now, of course, there's other, analysis that has to be done. But what's your take on that?
Well, reinfection would suggest to me that they were infected by a new variant of the coronavirus. So your immune system, when it develops antibodies, it's not clear what it's going to develop antibodies to. Most likely it's going to be those spike proteins that allow them to enter our cells. But again, mutations occur in those spike proteins, and essentially they're changing themselves so that the immune response doesn't see them anymore. So, and it's really important for your listeners and viewers to understand that, if you get sick with coronavirus and you recover, that is not a guarantee that when the next wave of coronavirus comes around, that you're going to have immunity. Some people will, some people won't.
Dr. Carter.
Hi, Dr. Grace. Thank you again. This is always important when we hear you. I'm curious about reopening the country. So we hear all this conversation, particularly from the president and others, that they want to go back to business as usual. But it seems like we're still on the front end of this thing and not on the back end, and there will still be moments where this reoccurs. What do you think we should be doing? Because the country will reopen at some point. Should we give up handshakes and all these usual ways of greetings? Like, what do you think this post-COVID life is going to look like, or at least a life with COVID? What does that look like?
Essentially, and this is something, again, I think in the last segment of the show I was on, I mentioned to people that, number one, people in my field have been predicting that these pandemics would be arising in greater frequency due to the current conditions in which human beings live. So we really need to rethink how our societies work. So sort of the daily habits and cultural things, certainly, I think handshaking should probably go the wayside of the dodo. In other words, we should find new ways to greet each other, because with infectious disease that can be transmitted by touch to your eyes, nose, etc., we want to limit the number of times that we touch people or surfaces that could be infected.
That's gonna be hard. That's gonna be hard for those of us in fraternities giving each brothers the grip, Doc.
Yeah.
What the hell? I mean, hell, Doc, we got certain ways to check to see if you're really an alpha. So I'm just saying.
I know, but I'm saying, we can learn how to do fist bumps.
We got to ask questions, man. You got to ask questions.
I don't know. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your comment. Go ahead.
On this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I think there are more fundamental things that are going to need to change. And again, you may remember, back when we talked the first time, I warned about particularly vulnerable segments of this population and how they were going to bear the brunt of sickness and death in this disease. Okay, I talked about how African Americans and other people who are marginalized and underserved were going to die at higher rates. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. I talked about the danger of what's going to happen with people that are incarcerated. So we see now that the most number of infections at least the United States, are in Cook County Jail. So we need to rethink how this society operates. And I was on a call yesterday that was sponsored by the Hutchins Center at Harvard with Professor David Williams, and he showed the many ways in which the historical health disparities that particularly African Americans suffer from in the society were essentially the preamble for what we were going to see with corona disease. So we need to address these fundamental structural things which lead to the spread of pandemics and disproportionately target people of color in the United States. So if anything comes out of this epidemic, which is good, it's going to be the realization that this country must address these long-standing structural racism, which leads to differential health outcomes for people of color.
Rob, last question. Go ahead.
Dr. Graves, two quick questions. One, I just want to make sure I have a point of clarification because I learned something new that I didn't know today. Your theory or what you have is that there are different strands, and the ones that somebody that may have recovered quickly might have caught a milder strand, where the people that are either have more severe symptoms or died caught a different mutation of the actual coronavirus. Is that correct? I want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah.
And if that's clear, what are we doing about, like, do we have any data on the more severe cases and how they're being spread? That's the first question. The second question has to do with vaccines versus treatments, because I talked to some doctors and they're saying as kind of Roland hinted, we may not get a vaccine. There's been other similar viruses to this that we still don't have vaccines for. I think Ebola, but we have treatment for it. Talk about the real difference between treatment versus vaccine and what that might mean too.
Okay, so what we know about corona in general with regards to how it makes people sick is when you compare the sequence of the spike protein on COVID-2 2019 versus the previous COVID that came out, near the turn of the millennium, and the bat coronaviruses that they're derived from. This new one has mutations in that spike protein that make it really good in terms of latching on to the ACE2 receptor on our cells. Now, ACE2 is angiotensin converting enzyme that's involved in regulating blood pressure. So clearly the ones that are going to be the most virulent you're probably going to see these mutations in that spike protein that allows them to gain entry into our cells. But there may be other factors involved, like the protease, which allows it to cleave proteins, etc. So with 5,300 variants, at present, I don't know which of these variants are the most dangerous compared to the mild ones. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be a range of variation in infectious diseases between the mild strains and the killer strains. Now, even though this may sound terrible, in one sense, the killer strains are more likely to burn themselves out because they're going to kill the people they infect. And if we have those individuals isolated, we have social distancing, then those killer strains should go extinct, which would favor, through time, the milder strains. But with the milder strains still existing, there's always the possibility that they're going to acquire a mutation that converts one of them into a killer strain, which is why this cycling is something that we're going to see for some time. So going on to this question of vaccine, this is also why creating a vaccine is difficult. One, because it takes a great deal of time to test it in a way that makes you confident that that vaccine is actually protecting people. And the other thing is that the viruses themselves continue to evolve. And so therefore, a vaccine that, like for the case of the influenza virus, we get a shot one season, which we predict, using bioinformatic methods, is going to protect us. And it protects some of us, but doesn't protect all of us. But then the next season of influenza, we have to get another vaccine. So vaccines, again, are difficult to come by. And in the case of these RNA viruses, their sustainability is always going to be an issue. Now, in terms of treatment, that's where we want to find antiviral drugs. And particularly, we want drugs that attack molecules that are specific to viruses. One of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of Trump's idea, this anti-malarial drug, is because malaria has the same cell structure as we do, which means it may work to stop the replication of the virus in some people, but in other people, it will be less effective, and it also, the side effects may make them really sick. So what we really want with regard to treatments are compounds that are specific to viral proteins and can tell the difference between a viral protein and your proteins. And what I understand is there is movement in the direction towards these treatments, but again, we're at the minimum 18 months out before we have a treatment. And then there's a question of doing case control studies to be sure that these treatments are in fact working, and that they, again, their side effects are not specific with regards to targeting any one group of people, which can also happen.
You know, I'm glad you made that point, because all these conservatives have been making a big deal out of this black woman, a state rep out of Michigan, who's a Democrat, who said that hydroxychloroquine was used and it saved her life. Trump sent a tweet out saying she thought she was dead. I think she'll be voting for me now. And again, they had her on Laura.
That's some live BS. I don't care. And Trump could save my life, I still would never vote for that.
and this is what she said, quote, here we go to my iPad. For me, it saved my life. I can only go by what it is that I have gone through and what my story is, and I can't speak for anyone else. So that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm only speaking for myself. And the bottom line is here is that you know, that look, she says that this saved her life, and you know, these folks said, see, that's it. That's why Trump's pushing it. That's why he's right. It saved this black woman's life. Everybody should take it. But you're saying that is the last thing in the world to do. And we've had doctors on here saying, I would not prescribe this.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's an anti-malarial, which means it attacks cellular components that are the same as ours. So it may, in fact, by chance alone, and that's really what we're saying, that woman, blind dumb luck, that anti-malarial drug happened to stop the replication of her COVID viruses. And there's absolutely no guarantee, especially given that all human beings are different. And we have, as I said, over 5,300 viral genomes that have been sequenced, meaning there's a great deal of variety within the COVID strains themselves. So that hydroxychloroquine might work for a few of those strains, but there's absolutely no way that you would expect or predict that it's going to work for all of them. And I would go further to say it was, again, probably only going to work for a minority of them. And that's why what we want in terms of a treatment is an antiviral drug, not a blind dumb luck from malaria drug.
Dr. Joseph Graves, Professor of Biological Sciences at North Carolina A&T. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. And folks, this is precisely why we have this show, why we need it, to have experts like Dr. Graves Jr. come on this show, showcasing that knowledge and the expertise. We've been doing this every single day, so we need you to support us, what we do. You can hit us up via Cash App, of course, $RM Unfiltered, via PayPal as well. Join our Bring the Funk fan club. Your support helps us make this possible. And again, we've had some phenomenal African Americans being able to showcase their knowledge. And for some reason, the other networks, they don't call them, but we seem to know how to get their phone number and put them on.
I wanted to say that too, Roland.
Go ahead.
What I notice on CNN, which I watch every morning, they seem to find all sorts of African American celebrities to put on, but they don't seem to know how to find African American scientists and medical practitioners to put on.
Well, look, it's not that hard. I know a whole bunch of celebrities, but you've seen very few celebrities on this show in the last month talking about coronavirus, because if I'm concerned about my health, I'm not calling a damn actor. You can play one on TV. You can play a doctor or a scientist on TV, but I'm not calling you. And that is the case, and so what I keep telling people, we've got, we've been able to find them. We've been able to find you, and look, we've even said to you, look, if there are others who you suggest we should have on, send us those names. We'll do so because we need more information. And when African Americans are getting information from African Americans, we are trusting that information more than some other people. And I can't speak for the Surgeon General, but some other people we actually trust. Dr. Graves,
I can't agree with you more, Roland.
I appreciate it, sir. Thanks. I want you to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications.